Well, this is Ross Lally, and Chair of the Board of Finance, and I am calling our regular meeting of June 15th, 2023 to order. And I've been told that Jim and Jill will not be present for the Board of Selectmen. And I believe that Pam Sawyer will not be present, or Bob Moore, or any of the selectmen there. I currently do not see anybody from the Board of Education online, and they are not hiding in the town hall office. So it looks like we will not have their representation. As far as members of the Board of Finance who are present, there's myself, Mather is present, Ashley is present, Amanda and Charlie, and online is Bob. So I will also then move on to the next item of agenda is just approval of the agenda. So just ask for a motion to approve the agenda as is.
Motion to approve.
And that's from Bob, and Ashley seconded it. Oh, this is just for this meeting. It's not the minutes. This is just like the agenda. So you want to, okay. Well, now they're second the motion to approve the agenda. And any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
What? So everybody who was present voted in the affirmative, so it passes unanimously. So let's go on to the approval of the minutes. So let's take a look at the minutes first for May 18th, the regular meeting.
I make a motion to approve the minutes from May 18th and May 24th as presented.
So do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have a second. So Amanda made the motion. Bob Monroe seconded it. Any discussion?
Yeah, I think it was Ashley. That,
I was just gonna say that I'll abstain because I wasn't there on the 18th.
And do we want to do them separately? I will amend my motion just to be for the minutes on May 18th.
Okay, do I have a second to the amendment?
second.
All right. So then we have a set, so we're going to just look at the May 18th minutes then. And I just noticed that a Kristen has joined.
Good evening. Sorry that I can't be there in person.
Okay. So then we just have, I just make a note that Kristen Heck joined us at 7:18. Was that Gorley or? It was Gorley?
Yes, it's Kristen Gorley.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. We'll make a note that Kristen Gorley joined at 7:18. Kristen Heck is still absent. And so, Kristen, what we are doing is looking at the minutes for the minutes for the meeting of the 18th, May 18th, the regular meeting. Yeah, I feel this same way based on memory. And just looked briefly at my notes beforehand and nothing jumped out at me. Any further discussion? Bob, you're okay?
Yep.
Then I will move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the May 18th regular meeting, please say aye.
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 And you were, Ashley, you're going to abstain. So we had affirmative votes from everyone except Ashley, who abstained, so the motion passes. Then let's go on to the minutes for the special meeting. That was of May 24th. I'll entertain a motion to either approve them as is, or we can discuss first. What would you guys like to do?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for May 24th.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
So the motion is made by Amanda, seconded by Ashley. Discussion.
Just one item in regards to that. I can't look it up at the same time as I have you on Zoom here, but
Yeah.
there was comment there by Sue Pike. I think it was in the notes, indicating that as long as she could remember, she'd never seen a referendum approved on the first round. Now, I know that Sue has been in this town for a long time.
Yeah.
Certainly at least 28 years. And I just wanted to correct that statement. There were 2 or 3 in the last 6 years, additionally. Not to diminish really from the fact that we got this was approved on the first round, and it was significant to the extent that it was a big ask. And so, but anyway, I just wanted the board to know, and I think I've mentioned it to the board before, that this is not a one-off thing. I mean, we all kind of said, let's have one and done, and that's what happened, and that's great.
Yeah, and what I was going to say, Bob, I do notice on the minutes is that I did clarify after she spoke, and it's recorded. It says Arlo Valley stated it has happened 2 times before, but wasn't recently.
Okay, I did not find that. So
Yeah,
I was having a hard time. I'm down the Cape, and I'm looking at these.
Yeah.
And
and she wasn't. Go, and Ashley, your
I can't
comment.
recall, so it was after that. It wasn't.
Yeah.
No question.
Mather? Bob, anything else, or good to go with the rest?
Good to go with the rest.
Okay, then, hearing no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the minutes of the special meeting of May 24th signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that one passed unanimously by all those present. So then, moving on to the rest of our agenda. Yeah, I hide my copy thereof with my notes. Next is to, we actually just to clarify anybody for the public and so forth, we do not have anybody here present from the Board of Education or from the Board of Selectmen. So what we could do tonight is any questions or comments on the information that was presented. We can then take it up at our next meeting. Or funnel them into Jill or to Kristen, and they will get back to us.
I have an observation on the Board of Ed submissions. That, I kind of watch that most carefully because that's where most of our money is. And I did note that they increased their projection for unspent funds to, I believe it was $190 some odd thousand. And I think if you just look at the amount of money that's been committed through May, and the amount of the budget, and I'm not looking at these numbers, sorry to say, but from recall, I believe that the remainder between now, or the report as of May 31 and the end of the fiscal year, June 30, I believe there's about 1.9 million left. Maybe somebody can do the math real quick there. 'Cause I can't see the numbers, but that was my recall.
Let me go, I can share it. Let me go share the screen. And I can go into, and you can tell me where to stop. So I presume we're not interested in the report commentary. You're looking at which page, Bob?
Right at the very end of their numbers. Yeah, back, keep going to the last page.
And what the projected underspending,
Yeah, right there.
190,000.
So we've got approved, okay. Go back to the year-to-date expended 5/31/23. We're looking at 12 million 385, is that correct? And
12,386.
okay, yeah, it's very small here and I can't move it. Can't expand it.
What I can do to enlarge that and still keep it on the screen.
You're a good man there, Ross. Thank you. Yeah, there we go. So 12,386,000, and we have 14,967 in the budget. That leaves 1.6, almost 1.6 million. Now I know that they have more expenses coming in that last month. But it does look to me as though there'll be additional monies available there at the end of the year. I would think 1.6. I would think it's probably going to be another couple $100,000 at least.
When you say another, do you mean on top of the 191,000, or do you mean
Correct.
totally?
Yeah,
So it's on
correct.
top of, so you're thinking then closer to 400,000?
I am.
So you're saying you think their projections for where they're gonna be at the end of the year are off?
Yeah, and I know they have a difficult time because they have so many other expenses that occur at the end of the year, including some people who get paid, or on a 10-month schedule instead of 12. So I've never really seen, I have no way of really predicting that with just past experience. So I'm just thinking that we're not going to have 1.6 million in expenditures in this last month when you normally we're expending about $850,000 to $900,000 a month.
Can I ask a question? This is Kristen. Because, and I don't have the paperwork in front of me. I'm sorry, I'm driving. But if I remember correctly from Casal's summary that she sent to us, aren't they expensed at 82% this year as opposed to 80% last year? And the only reason I bring that up as it pertains to this is that it does seem like there's something that's not jiving, but I don't know. It sounds like we are actually spending more at the moment than we did at least last year. Am I wrong on that?
No. And part of that is, is in the support services area due to just cost of special ed. But the other side of that coin is, some of this, I don't know it well enough, but some of it can just be timing as to when certain stuff hits. Certainly, Ashley, I'm sorry. No, sorry, that was Kristen. You're aware that sometimes you can have an extra pay period fall in a month or whatever else, and I'm not sure that happened, but it could be something as simple as that would explain that difference. But we, anyway, that's just my observation. For what it's worth, there's still obviously another month to go and numbers to be accumulated. But I just wanted to throw out there
I
to the
could
board.
certainly refer that to, to Kristen Hecht. It's just like an observation that it appears to, based on looking at the way the numbers are shaping up and understanding that, we still have another month to go. It looks like, there might be a $400,000, a surplus closer to $400,000 than to the current 191,000
Yeah, which by,
projected. Could she please comment? Because we just want some more insight into that observation. How is money, going to be spent? Because it's not always clear, as you said, issues, involving timing and so forth.
right. And I might add that if you look at the 22, May 22 report, they did revise their projected unspent funds up to like 436,000 at the end of May.
Yeah.
So it just kind of sticks out to me, and I'm watching it all the time. So I just wanted to point it out to the board for their information.
Yeah, I think it's just a valid question to ask and see what their observations are about it. Any other?
It would almost be nice if there's more, my area with the revenue.
When you say by area, because isn't it, what would be different from there? Because I'm looking here and it looks like 190,959, and it is sort of by area up above. No,
Yeah, but to get to like the map for the 400.
If they projected the next month,
Yeah.
she means.
Oh,
Does anyone
okay.
remember?
Just the squeeze,
Does anyone remember what was unexpended last year that they gave back? I think it was around 400.
It was, I believe, in the end, closer to 600,000 when all was said and done.
Oh yeah, you're right, actually. Because if we're on track with 82% versus last year at 80%, that's pretty close. Then
Right.
if then it theoretically should be pretty close to what it was last year. So if it was 600.
Right, but Matt, the one difference there, Mather, is when you look at the support services, we're looking at a deficit of 230,000.
Right.
Yeah.
And Kristen's made it clear that this year, at least my sense of it was that there was a lot more cost there this year than
Yeah.
last year.
Correct.
So
Yeah.
that
Yep.
might be off by a couple 100,000
Yeah.
even.
because you would have to assume that all things were equal if you were going to base it on last year, and it's not. But
Correct.
it's still, I think it's still a good question to ask.
Now, pardon my ignorance, but because they didn't give any money back to us for next year's budget, what happens with their rollover money?
What was the end of that? What happens? What?
Because they didn't give us any money back for next year's budget, what happens to the
I thought
remainder?
they did. It's about what, 90,000?
Yeah.
90,000.
No, they
No,
didn't
that
give
was-
us that, they just reduced, okay, yes. However, they reduced their.
They reduced
anticipated expenditures.
their expenditures, so they didn't give anything back to be,
They didn't give us any of
accurate.
this year's,
yeah, because it was because of the primarily because of the
Right,
insurance.
right.
Correct.
Oh, right.
you know what happened?
It goes into the general
The general
fund,
fund, okay,
and then
Yeah.
it gets used towards reducing mill rate next year.
okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Towards next year's budget, right?
Okay, thank you.
The same thing with the Board of Selectmen's, any overage that they have that they didn't
They have a
predict.
fund.
Hmm?
There's another fund that they put some money into first.
Oh,
before-
yeah. The reason?
I forget, there's some fund that they have to, any overages, money goes into. And that it's used to the general fund.
Yeah, we have the rainy day fund stuff, but some of that comes out of the, whatchamacallit, the contingency.
Yeah.
No, and it's still a good question to ask, and it's just something else to be aware of too. And I've mentioned this before, it's not a surprise, is that the Board of Education budget is a little bit different than the Board of Selectmen's in that theirs is governed by state, by certain state statutes that, their budget for next year starts at what their budget, their approved budget was for this year. it's not like the Board of Selectmen's budget. So, the Board of Education's budget cannot be significantly reduced unless there's this, I don't know the exact formula, but a significant decline in student enrollment. So the overages have a different effect longer term with Board of Education than they do with Board of Selectmen, because we just created a new floor for their budget by the amount of this overage. So it's kind of like name your poison. Where do you want, your savings to come from money that gets rolled over next year into next year's budget, reducing the mill rate, or do you want to take it out of a current year? So again, it's a philosophical discussion because you have to pay for all this stuff one way or another, but it's also just different because we cannot make a cut below a certain point with the Board of Education, whereas we don't have that restriction with the Board of Selectmen.
I mean, I'll just say that, like, I'm pretty impressed. I mean, I don't ever expect a budget to come in right at zero, right? And if you look at what they're projecting to be left, even if it is 400,000 or 500,000, you're talking like 3 percentage points of the budget, right? That's pretty small.
Yeah,
I
again,
would agree. I would agree with that. I was saying, I was just pointing it out, not as a criticism at this point, but as just an observation.
yeah, and it's the same thing what I'm doing now too, is just making that observation about how the budgets are controlled differently. And I shouldn't say control, they're handled by different sets of statutes to be correct about it. And some of it comes down to how do you want to do this? And sometimes it's a philosophy, more of a philosophical discussion. It's not right or wrong. It's whether you take it out of this year's budget, then you don't have it in next year's surplus. So you save money this year, but then it looks like, oh, gee, now you're raising, the mill rate next year because we didn't have that money roll over from this year. So, you wind up paying the same, but, how do you want to do it? Any other questions for Kristen? Again, I can just send this to her and just ask her to reply back through Jill. And again, it's, it would be, no group emails back and forth with her. If you had any individual questions to her, directly, not to the whole team, because then it could be a ad hoc type of meeting.
Yeah, she's not going to really have a response to that until they get to their final numbers. But, just to buttress what I was saying, if you look at the area above salaries and wages, and you look at the expenditures to date, 10.2 million. So when you're looking at 11 months, that's about $850,000, I think, a month. And the difference between the 10,000,002 and our total budget for that area is 2,050,000. So anyway, that just kind of fleshes out what I was saying. So.
Right. And another way you could do this too would be to possibly to increase the size of the contingency fund. And then if they run low, then, there's a place to take the money. And again, I don't know the terms that you can take stuff out of the contingency fund, but if this were to be an option, then you would need to make the contingency fund substantially larger. So you still wind up spending the same amount of money. It's just where do you put it? And at the end of the day, they still have to stick to their budgets. So,
and they do. I mean, our whole town, both sides.
And I'm agreeing with you, Bob. I'm not saying this is criticism of folks. You can never manage this to the dime or penny. It's right. There's too much going on in the background that we have no control over to be able to manage it that tightly. But they do still stay within the budget, which is the key thing. So any other questions on that? I was going to say, if not, we could go on to any questions for town on tax collection and such. Jim, And Jill said they had nothing that were watch items at the moment.
Oh, I had a question for you, Ross, on this. So I assume they don't
On
have,
which,
about Jill and Jim.
okay.
I am assuming that they haven't heard back from the bank on the specifics yet, or on the interest issue.
I asked Jill about that today since she wasn't going to be here. She said that the bank had presented several proposals to the Board of Selectmen,
Right.
and there were two proposals that the Board of Selectmen debated. One was for a minimum balance of $5 million to avoid fees, and an interest rate of 4%, variable interest rate of 4%. The other option that they considered was a minimum balance of 3 million to avoid payment of fees, and a 3.5% variable interest rate.
Was there a decision reported? Okay, I'm sorry.
So those were the two options that they considered.
Uh-huh.
And then at their last meeting, the Board of Selectmen voted to go with the 5 million and the 4%.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
Jill felt it would have been, she would have gone with the other proposal just because she figures it's very easy to go below the 5 million before we, especially like this, the end of this year, beginning of next, before we start actually booking the revenue, that it would be possible to dip below 5 million more easily than it would be the 3 million. And then there's the question of, I don't know if the fees add up to,
right.
the 5% difference. I don't have the information to say yay or nay. And when I asked her, she didn't either. She just said this was, her gut feeling based on how she sees the funds,
Right.
our fund balances going.
I mean, I
Did,
think.
did they? I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Did Jill indicate by chance anything that what is going to be the controlling factor on this variable rate? I mean, example, the Fed met and left the rates as they are for the month of June. I think speculation, I think with some reason, is and statements that the Fed has made that they anticipate probably at least two more 0.25% increases during this next several months. So as an example, then that's why I wonder about, was there any definition to the variable rate and what drives it? If indeed it goes up another 0.5%.
Yeah, like, is it based on the federal funds rate? What is it? What is it based on? I did not ask her, so I cannot say, and I know we had asked before and they were not aware, but I can just ask her again.
If you could, it'd be good.
Yeah, I think it's a good question because that would help with planning purposes, because if you know what index it's based on and you have an idea of what direction that index is going and when, that would help with, better with some of our planning.
Yeah.
Yes, Amanda.
I was gonna say that this question of how much money we have in the bank and when has come up quite a few times, and it's actually something that's pretty easy
You can look
to
at
answer.
it.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, so it'd be nice to see, like,
Like
from the monthly
monthly?
statement, the average running daily balance from the last 1 or 2 years, right? So we can see when it dips below and how far, and shouldn't be too hard to.
So I'll ask her that too. So one thing is, what index is their variable interest rate based on from our banking partners? And the other is, could you just give us a running monthly balance of, our funds? So that would help us better understand and again, that's other valuable information for this current board to know. And I think the future committee as well.
Mhm.
So is there an agreement that was proposed and not yet signed, or?
Jill said it's all signed. The selectman did it. She said she just spent a horribly long time signing it,
Okay.
all the required documents. Yeah, so it should be in there, one would hope. So I will ask.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're better off. than we were before.
Oh, I think we're definitely better off, and I'm sure another controlling factors are keeping an eye on it, the future finance committee keeping an eye on it and calling our banking partners to task as, per your suggestion, Bob.
Mhm.
Because it seemed to have an effect regardless of what our agreement with them was and whatever index was being used.
Yeah, you might recall, they said, oh yeah, we're gonna double it to 1%.
We could send it up before we even talk to you. So again, I'm sure some of it is because as, we're saying that, they have a better idea of how we are as a financial partner. And some of it also just comes down to just pushing when it's appropriate. So they obviously had some wiggle room. So again, we should keep an eye on it. And our future finance committee should do the same thing. So I just think it's just important to have a more active role in it the way we've been doing. Anything else on the town side?
No, I look at these balance sheets and I see the projections and everything else, and what I don't see is, for example, a lot of unfunded items that came through. For example, and I look at obviously the things that bothered us this past year, the interest, that's going to be a thing. I look at the shared services, the assessor.
Which one are you looking at? I'm sorry.
Wellington, I'm assuming. I'm just wondering when we get these payments for some of these grants, when are they going to show up? Is it going to be the end of June?
Right, good question.
So, $108,000 from all the grants, and donations and things to the Board of Education. I'd like to know that they're coming, or to what degree, and we don't have those answers with these reports. So
it's timing of some of the revenues, and whether it's interest or grants.
for shared services or, obviously we're not going to get the interest like to make up that shortage. But we've had other items that have been in excess of what was expected. So I think that almost balances it off. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, we've got that just don't show up.
This also, and when you mentioned that also reminded me, like getting back to that comment on the banking partnership, because that affects the balance that we have. And that is another reason that Jill would have preferred the lower rate. But one of the selectmen suggested, well, the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen can just reduce their spending for the summer, which is when all the work gets done at the schools because the students are not there, which is when we do a lot of road work. And you don't really have that option necessarily to defer some of these expenditures to later in the year, because you just can't do some of the road work in the winter, and you can't do a lot of this work in the schools when the students are there. So I think about the only thing you might be able to do would be defer some of the hiring, but she said also we have our bond payments that come due during the summer and so forth.
Right.
So again, there's like a lot of moving pieces that fit into this, and just helping to see that balance, I think, by the month, because then that would at least give us questions like, why is it lower here? What is driving that? Is it expenses or revenue or a combination? That our balance, does what it does. And it actually would be good if I could get it for more than 1 year. So if we could go back 5 years, perhaps, so that you could just see if there's certain patterns that just, repeat regardless.
I would think they could even just add a timing column to this report that says whether payments come in quarterly or what month they generally come in, or, it's not, we don't want to make it super hard, but.
I'm sure they know all that. It's just that
Right.
we don't.
She
know.
tells us.
Oh, she'd tell.
It would be nice, yeah. If you write it down once, then you don't have to do it for any future board. You know what I mean? So long as nothing changes, right?
But yeah,
I'll just mention that too, because then it's a little more you do, but you're just doing it once as opposed to we just keep asking.
Right. Or when new people join a board and have questions, right?
revenue. Kind of like us, what
Jill was also hypothesizing that we may have, because of the increased mill rate and just where people's financial situations are, that, she doesn't have any direct evidence, but she just hypothesized there's a possibility that the collection rate on taxes may be lower.
usually happens.
So again, just something to keep an eye on. Again, just because of the two reasons. One, we just increased the amount that people owe. And then the fact that the economy isn't doing that well and jobs and so forth. So we got inflation. Well, that's what I'm saying. The economy may be moving along, but you got inflation and wages don't necessarily keep up with the inflation. Any other questions? Again, I'll just make a note of this, send a note to Jill and to Kristen, and so at least they will know that the board is interested.
I don't know if we're gonna do transfers.
We can do that.
There's a lot going to road repair. Like 75,000.
And
Wonder
I
if
go
there's a story
back
behind
up
that.
to transfers.
They seem to be transferring it from other way areas, but wonder if there's a general story.
These look like they're funds from other items that weren't fully utilized. They look like they may be taking advantage of getting the road work done.
Yeah, I wonder if they moved a
75,000.
project from next year into this year.
Oh, and it's the same thing. You look at,
I'm not aware of any emergencies out there where roads failed.
But they took from tree trimming, which I think I remember Jim Rupert saying months ago that had decreased. And from sand, salt and sand, which makes sense.
yeah, the tree trimming, I know that they're able to reduce because they're basically partnering with Northeast Utilities to get trees trimmed that Northeast Utilities would be doing anyway.
Yeah, maybe they had some extra money in some areas that they decided to do something. I don't know.
Again, that would be a good question. Because I'm also seeing some transfers, for Board of Education as well as, the Board of Selectmen.
The one that stands out to me, and this is just because I don't have an update on where the temporary office building stands, but we transferred $5,000 to connect to have electricity connected to the temporary office building.
Two
Doesn't
times
exist yet.
times two,
Sounds like
Well,
preference.
10,000, but it says funds needed to have the electricity connected, so they want to have it ready to pay
So is it?
when it.
There's nothing that I have heard about the building anytime soon, because the last thing that they formally said about it was they were going to have it at the beginning of June. It would be then configured, if you recall, and then ready for people to move in by July. And as you can see, there's nothing sitting out there. But, but then again, to Mather's point is there's some work that they do after it arrives, and then there's some that they have to do before it arrives. So they can get the lines, put in and ready to be connected, disconnect whatever they don't want to have connected anymore in that half of the building and so forth.
If it's coming soon, it makes sense. If it was gonna be.
Yeah, again, I don't know. I have no idea when it's coming, but there is stuff that,
Supposed to be here by now.
yeah, I know it's supposed to be here, but it isn't. And I don't have any more details than what I just said, other than I know it's been delayed again, but I have no ETA or anything additional. No, but it's a question that we can ask for update on trailer. trailer slash temporary office space.
Well, don't call it a trailer.
Well, I refer to it as the trailer park.
Yeah.
It works when you start talking about it that way because it makes it sound less appealing,
Very close to that.
which is then I won't pay as much in taxes because I'm not planning to sell. But no, sometimes one shouldn't always try to find the politically correct or the nice way of saying things.
I'm in agreement with your wording there. Trailer park is fine.
I have other words that I use to describe things down there, but I won't say them here while we're being recorded. But they also help with moving things along. Any other questions on any of the town updates or such? So I have my
No.
notes that I will send off to folks. Bob, you all set?
I am.
Mather, Charlie, Amanda. Okay, then we can move on to our ongoing business and discussion regarding the RFP for the auditor. So I did talk to Jill about that. She said she has completed the RFP and gave it over to Jim. And that it is basically the same terms as our current contract with our current auditor, just that there would be different dates for it and different, amounts depending on, it's basically the same services. And then it's just a matter of the timeline and so forth and whatever the responses come back as. So regarding this, she said, we have two options with this. We could move ahead with the RFP, which doesn't give us much time to consider things and to review and approve for the next fiscal year. And then that would also for this year, doesn't give us much time. And the other option is to extend the contract with our current auditor.
The charter allows for that?
Yes.
The current charter?
I think we may have already extended it once.
I don't
But
recall whether we did or not, but she said it's allowed under the charter.
Okay. The guy's done an absolute incredible job for us. And he has saved us a lot of money over what would happen when we normally would go out to bid, unless, he chose to bid again. But if he wants to keep going, again, like I say, he's done an incredible job for a good price. And I would encourage, if we could extend it, I would say do it. Otherwise, hopefully get an assurance from him that he will bid.
So I can give you the figures that she had. They had already discussed the contract with him and he had come back with a figure, same terms as the existing one, same services. And so here's the other thing to consider too. If we got a new auditor in to do 2023, the current year's budget, then they would probably charge more to do that because they have their setup costs, because they do not have access to all the information, the history and that. So there would be additional costs over just simply extending it. And, it's has to be within what we've budgeted, but then it still would be a matter of some more money would be available to return to the general fund.
And we'd have to provide space for them.
And extra time for Jill and all that other stuff. So let me give you the figures. So what we have allocated for in the fiscal year 2024 budget, Jill just sent me this stuff, so I didn't have time to send it out, but the amount we have budgeted for fiscal year 2024 is $45,000. That was the worst case scenario. So if we did an RFP, their responses need to come back, more or less within that. So our current auditor said that he would do a 1-year extension for a total of $30,500. And that town's portion of that would be 25,000. And apparently Bolton Lakes also pays towards a portion of that, and they would
Right,
pay
yeah.
pay $5,500. So that's where you get the 30,500 from. So those are really the two options to consider. And if we wanted, we could approve going with the current, with extending the current order. We could do it tonight, require a motion, a second, and a vote of approval on it, and then they would go ahead with that. We would then still do the RFP, but we would be covered for the audit for 2023. And then we would have more time to get an auditor into place to do the 2024 audit.
We would still do the RFP, right?
Yeah.
We push it off.
She said, I asked her about that too. Do we need to push it off? She said, no, it would be better to do it now, because then you have that much more time to evaluate it and get the person into place and get them set up so they're not rushing at the end of next, fiscal year to do this year's,
Still submit.
Yeah, I think we'll be hard pressed if we got to an RFP to come in anywhere near that number.
Excuse me, Bob, I'm sorry.
I think that if we went out for, a request for proposals, and he's willing to charge us, wants to charge us, what, 30,000, I think he said?
30,500.
30,500. We would be really, there's no way we would get anything that low. There's no way, in my opinion.
That was her opinions and Jim's, is just based on their experience and what the market is like. And talking to some other towns, what did they pay? And they felt that this was a reasonable amount. Then it gives us more time to put an RFP out, more time for responses to come in, more time for us to evaluate it, and whether we choose or make a recommendation to the finance committee and let them decide. We have that, further options down the road as well. I just think the more we can do to help get things ironed out in advance for the finance committee when they take over, is because they're going to have enough trouble just getting organized, figuring out how to do things and who's in charge and all that stuff, because new players in a new system. So the more that we can hand off to them cleanly, I think it's a better, transition. So again, thoughts on this. So those are the two options, basically going with the RFP, or we go with the extension and then do the RFP as well.
Motion to approve the extension of the present auditor, Mr. Hopkins, for an additional year.
So that was Bob making the motion to extend the contract for the current auditor at a cost of $30,500 for the year.
Continue with the RFP.
And continue with the RFP, Bob?
Yeah, they're actually two separate questions, I think.
Okay. We can handle this separately.
Right, because he just may offer us additional extensions beyond that. And I'm not sure if there's any requirement to say that we, must go out with an RFP, but
There isn't, but so let's get a second on this. Let's stop the discussion. Let's get a second, and then we can have this discussion. It's a very good discussion. So then Charlie just seconded the motion to extend the current auditor's contract. So now we can do this discussion.
I think it's a single question, actually. I think we're saying do the extension along with doing the RFP, not making it a separate issue.
That was Jill's recommendation, her recommendation was to handle it as you said. I mean, we can get there either with one question or you can get there with two.
I've seen this happen in the past with different communities. And it really smooths out the flow of operations because it gives the town the ability to have an audit in place while at the same time an auditor in place, as well as examining. We may not want the same auditor next year. And we may want someone that's come in with opening up a new shop that'll give us a fantastic deal. Or we may want something that's a little, someone comes in and opens our eyes as to something that the town has been missing.
Yeah.
And present us an opportunity.
Yeah, and I guess alternatively, he could always come in and make a proposal anyhow. That's going to come in way
Correct.
lower than everyone else. So yeah, I would agree with.
Yeah, and I would hesitate to consider just extending him indefinitely year after year after year, just for the
Yeah,
point of view of due diligence. And the same thing is with our banking partners. It's great to have a good established relationship, but it's also very good to check.
Yeah.
Yep.
The only thing is this current auditor has continued to highlight certain things and, yeah, we're not really addressing them. So he has had some
Yeah.
good findings.
I will say that I don't know if this committee can choose the auditor for FY '24. Because the new charter does specify that the finance committee shall appoint it, and I don't know if we would be grandfathered in as the
Yeah.
board of finance. So we may have to let the finance committee choose it, and then
We can probably
They
start
can-
the RFP process. though.
Yeah. So that's fine. Let's just go.
We could make a recommendation and then they could do what they want, which is what I would kind of want to do anyway.
And then in terms of extending that contract, the new rules are they shall not exceed 4 years and shall not extend more than 1 year beyond the regularly scheduled election for the office of first selectman. So they definitely constrain on the new.
Yeah.
He just invited me over to watch sunset. I said I'd come over.
Well, we're gonna come about food.
Oh, I didn't.
Yeah.
Ross, I have a question as we're discussing this. Do
Yeah.
we have a separate ongoing document for some of these handoff items? Because I definitely think this is one of them, for a few reasons. First off, we've been discussing this for months and, now we're at the stage of where we're just going to extend it, whether it's the right thing or wrong thing to do or not. I mean, we had discussed this for months and we didn't see much action on it. But do we have some type of an ongoing separate document?
No, but I think it's a good thing based on this conversation. So what I could do is ask, how do we do this? Do we send them into Jill and Jill gives the suggestions to me? Or do you just bring them to the next meeting and we record them? Or we could just do it now?
I'd like to move the question because
Let's-
I have to get off.
So why don't we just take the vote on this then? And then we
I'd like that.
can talk about some of these other things separately. So then I will entertain since we have a motion and a second, I will entertain a vote on the extension, 1-year extension of our current auditor. So all those in favor,
Aye.
opposed, abstentions, then it passes unanimously by all those present. And,
I'm gonna have to take off and say good night, everybody.
all right,
Uh,
thank you, sir.
Good night,
Uh,
Bob.
Good night.
Night,
Take
Bob.
care. All right. Bye-bye.
So then I would also entertain, just to follow up on what Charlie did, because this motion was specific to the auditor's extension, is just to acknowledge that we should proceed with the RFP. So I would entertain a motion that we proceed with the RFP process for another auditor.
So moved.
So Amanda made the motion. Ashley seconded it. Discussion. No need to look on the screen anymore since Bob has left. Well, Kristen's still here, but she doesn't have a screen.
I have my phone. I can pull it up.
Okay, so I'm not hearing any further discussions. So then all those in favor of continuing with the RFP process in parallel, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, so that also passes unanimously. So we have new business, which was long-term sustainability of our town budget. And I think that also we can also cover quickly, basically, I think what you're suggesting, Kristen, was that we have some sort of a handoff document, not really a transition plan, but these are things that the finance committee needs to consider that we have been talking about. So my answer is no, we do not have one that I'm aware of, but yes, we should, start one. So then I would ask that you guys make a listing of this, bring it to the next meeting, and that's something else we need to talk about too. Because I saw some head shaking when they were surprised that we were not going to be meeting in July or August. And because that's sort of been the tradition since I've been on the board. And so it doesn't have to continue as a tradition, especially if we have a new process that's coming into place. And it would be good to get some things organized and also set the tone for what we think the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen should be looking at, because that's something we typically have not done in the past either. It's we turn them loose to their own devices and then we comment afterwards, as opposed to saying, giving some guidance. And I don't see any reason why we can't make suggestions. So I guess my question, I talked to Jill about this. She said that we're not budgeted for those, but the main expense is the other Ashley's time or whoever we get to clerk. So if we wanted, there's nothing that prevents having one of us take the minutes for any other meetings, and that saves us $75 for the first hour. And then the rate for the next hour is another $25 to bring it up to 100. So we could save, depending on how long we think these meetings will go, we could save $75 to $100 for each meeting. And
Right now, as we have in the past, we just have September and October,
correct.
because then the new finance committee would take over. in
Yes.
November. They should maybe.
Whatever. I don't know whether they do that or they wait till there's, I'm not exactly sure of the timing on it, but it doesn't leave much time for us to get things wrapped up and turned over.
Elections at the beginning of November, and our meetings might time it out so that we can be new elected people on the finance committee, depending on the date. And I think that's how when we were voted on board, that first meeting we were sworn in and we were elected in early November. We served, the first meeting was in that first November.
Correct. So then that would mean that we could be out of business as soon as the October meeting, which would then only mean 2 meetings.
We have to leave our legacy to them.
Yes. So I'm thinking it wouldn't hurt to do a July and/or an August meeting. And if we needed to, we could take our minutes ourselves. They just have to be in the same general format that, Ashley has been doing. And if we didn't have a quorum, because not everybody's going to be available, then we could just have an informational meeting for discussion, which I think is mostly what we're going to do, as opposed to making any policy, decisions. And then we could always, based on our discussions that we had, make any policy decisions or formal recommendations by motion in September.
So the new board their position will start the second Monday following the election.
So then we're out of business in
And the
October.
election is the first Monday following the first Tuesday in the month. Of
That's the
November.
first Tuesday following. The
Right.
first Monday.
First Tuesday following the first Monday.
You said it the other way.
Okay.
Well, let's break it down like this, if I may. I mean, I know for myself, like, it is very questionable whether I'm going to be around for July and August as well. I mean, I don't know what everybody else's schedules are. But I mean, if we, I think we need to start off there. Is there the availability? Are people going to be around certainly enough to have a quorum? I mean, I think that kind of needs to be decided now before we start putting meetings on the books. That's just my take on it.
First of all, since there's nothing formally scheduled, we can have these as special meetings. So we
Okay.
have to just be very sure of what the topic is, and then they could be on a date that's convenient to the most people. And our quorum is 4.
But we're
So-
early enough now where we could schedule them as a regular meeting too. I think we just need 30 days in advance.
I'll have to check.
So when's the third Thursday of July? If we get them.
Let's see, so today's the 15th, so it's probably the 16th or something like that,
20th.
20th.
I will be getting back on the 20th. And the August one would be the 18th, the 17th.
And again, they don't need to be on those dates. And they don't need to be on a Thursday.
And would we want full reports? Would we want town and school reports just to see what's coming in? Or are we going to leave this as more of special meeting and informative? I guess, what do we want to accomplish here? What's the goal?
Yeah.
That's the question. Yeah.
When I was talking to Jill about it, I mentioned this to her, and I was thinking that this would be more of putting together, our transition package, and also addressing the fact that, we have a general feeling that the way we're doing things now is not sustainable, and that has to be addressed too. So, I think that's what I think the focus would be on, is like the handoff package to the finance committee and recommendations on, sustainability. And ideally, it would be nice to have a quorum, so the meeting's official, but if we didn't, we could still have discussions, but we couldn't make any decisions, and the discussion would be recorded publicly. Public could attend. It's just that we wouldn't be able to make any formal motions or recommendations, but we could certainly have items for future consideration when we could make that recommendation.
So it does look like we will still have a November meeting. Because the November meeting is the 16th, and I think the newly sworn in people will take office on the 20th. If that changes anything, so we'll have September, we definitely will have September, October, November.
I'll have to check. We'll have at least the two.
At least. When did the boards give us their end of fiscal year 23 reports? Usually September.
Yeah, that's what they've been doing. And typically, it's new the first 2 months of the budget. It's nothing really to worry about, unless something significant comes up.
And when do we usually approve the audit report?
That's the thing, we didn't approve the audit report.
We're supposed to.
That was my question. Jim ended up approving it.
Oh, it says in the charter we're supposed to.
I would expect that.
Or maybe I didn't read the old charter. I'm reading a new charter.
And nobody is quite sure of which one still applies and when, just because we're still under.
Yeah,
So
I think there's also a lot of work to do to address what's in the current auditor's report, so that could be.
that would be some other things to add in for transition. So then let's get back to what, Kristen was suggesting too about when. Because it's not what I'm hearing is interest in meeting. And then it sounds like when, to see how that interest plays out with what we actually can do. So I have no specific travels yet planned for either July or August. I'm not planning maybe a 3-day trip at some point midweek.
We're not allowed to do doodle polls, are we?
Hmm?
We can't do doodle polls, can we?
And
A doodle poll? To like figure out when everybody's.
Oh, like a. It's like an app.
oh, Google poll,
Doodle, yeah.
or Doodle, whatever.
Doodle. To see when everybody's available.
I still
Oh,
tic tac thing in my paper.
so why don't we just pick a day? So who's available on July 30th, just on July 20th rather, because that's when the next meeting would be if we were doing it. Charlie, you available?
Don't think I have anything in towards the end of
And then we
July.
can celebrate the anniversary of the first person on the moon the same day. So July 20. And same time, 7:15. And the purpose is specifically transition planning and planning. And that would also include, discussions on sustainability. So I'll just put that as like definition. That would be continuing discussions on sustainability, and then, items of importance to be specifically handed off to the new finance committee. And that way that could either be a regular meeting, or it sounds like it's more like it's going to be a special meeting anyway, because it's going to be limited to those topics as opposed to having the town and Board of Education come in. Okay, so let's just see, what about August? We'll have the same agenda for both. And again, I don't know if having a quorum is critical, because if this is more discussion and pulling ideas together, we can then also, firm them up in September.
I will do my best to attend these meetings, but I'm very, very up in the air. So don't rely on me if you do need a quorum.
Yeah, and again, I don't think we need one for what we want to do, because it's really
I don't
just
think so either. Yeah.
compiling listings and points of interest, and then any formal recommendations we could make motions on in September or October.
And so in that case, Ross, just to make sure I'm minding my P's and Q's, would it be okay to email, or should I still go through Jill if I'm unable to attend with thoughts and suggestions?
Technically, you should go through Jill,
Okay.
or I'll have to just double check on that, because what we really need to avoid is the appearance of that you're doing one of, this basically a meeting that really isn't a meeting.
Right.
And so if we have 4 or more people sending emails back and forth, you're having a
Right.
meeting that you shouldn't be.
Right. Okay.
So I could imagine that if you sent a note to Jill and copied me on it, then that would be fine.
Okay.
Because Amanda has done, and I have done some similar things, and it's, purely to catch up on a few things, like on that presentation that she put together and some things at the last minute. And that, I think, does not fall within your having a meeting, because we didn't make any decisions, and it was just making sure we have the latest information plugged in type of thing. So I think that would be fine. So I would
Okay.
say, if you guys have suggestions, send them to Jill, copy me, and then I can compile them. So it won't be more work for Jill, but then Jill is also aware of them.
Okay.
What was the tentative date in August?
We haven't picked one, so let's keep on with the August one. So it looks like it would be what, the 17th? I already have time allocated for it on my calendar, because I just did the whole year without bothering to take out July and August. Charlie, you look sort of like you're free, or no?
August is
When
bad.
possible.
Ashley, is that yes, you're free, or yes, you're not?
I think I'm good.
Amanda?
Yeah, I haven't planned any vacation.
Oh, don't let this meeting stop you. It's a special meeting. We could always move it, within reason. I don't want to like jerk people around the public who because they have to be able to attend these too. And if you change them at the last minute, it affects their ability to do so. So then when do we do Thursday again? August 17th. Same time, same place. And I said, if you want, we could either do some discussion now, or we could just start sending them in.
Yeah.
I would just as soon wrap it up tonight.
Just as a FYI, if we're taking our own notes, right, we're obligated to file our votes within 48 hours. and
Correct.
the
They
final
have to.
minutes within a week.
Yes,
Just have to be timely.
thank you. I was going to bring that up. The minutes are the key part. But if we don't make anything that needs to be voted on, then you have the
Right.
week.
Yeah.
And
So
it sounds like for the purpose of what we're doing too, it wouldn't matter that we don't do any. I don't think we're going to have any motions. And I think it would also be good to include the public, as we have been with everything else, even the special meetings, so they have on their public, input and comment. And if you guys think of any, see the public while you're out there, invite them to come to these, because I would like their, input. It's not going to be a public hearing or anything, but it would be good to have people who are interested sit in on this. Because I think we need to let all the voters know that we take seriously, like you were saying at the last meeting, Ashley, that even though some people voted yes, this may not, I don't think they were 100% happy.
Right.
And the other thing to consider too is, yes, the schools are a selling point, but at what mill rate do they stop becoming a selling point? Because I can go to a nearby town that has a lower mill rate, and the schools may not be quite as good as Bolton, but money talks. So, again, it's just like, and that also touches on what does Bolton want to be and how do we want to, pay for that? So it's nothing we're going to decide on so much as make out some things that people haven't talked about in the finance committee in the past and just get it out there on the agenda. Because I think it's a really good thing to have these conversations and do things a little bit more proactively, which I appreciate you guys participating in, because it makes this a lot more interesting and makes it more relevant to our own lives, plus everybody else in town too. So I will then, so again, as I said, you guys have any ideas on the sustainability, on handoff items? Sounds like you all have some ideas already. Write them down, send them to Jill, copy me, I'll throw them in an Excel spreadsheet and we will have them to talk about. I will also talk to Sue Ellen and Kathy about getting these 2 meetings on the calendar so that people are not surprised and, people have time to get here to participate. And then we also will have a good product to hand off, work product to hand off to our successors. Some of whom may be some of us and some of whom may not. All right. And would you send me that invitation again, Amanda, that you had mentioned?
I think the one.
Yeah, just so that it shows up. Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. So then, second, we're adjourned at 8:29.